Mr. Bidach? Right? Yo. Hi, viewers. Once again, welcome to another episode of Karate with Sensei Joseph Rodrigues and Goa 365. This is our second episode. I hope you joined us for the first episode where we did the basics. I also explained a little bit about karate. But as we do in every session of karate, we are going to start with the warm-ups. Okay? It's always important, any session of sport, you always warm up first. The reason why we do warm-ups is that the muscles are in inactive state and you have to start working the muscles just as you do it for any other, like when you have a vehicle. Okay, if you have a car, you always put first in first gear, then in second gear, third gear, and in fourth gear. The same way in karate. You have to start with a warm-up so your muscles get warmed up, so that when you're training, you do not get a catch or you do not pull a muscle, because a muscle, if it is suddenly put into use, it can get pulled and it can get injured or it can get torn. So warm-ups are very important, and like I said in my previous episode also, along with me, Sensei Joseph Rodrigues, I have my two co-instructors. There's Sensei Sybil Fernandez, who is a double silver medalist at the World Championships. We have Sensei Akash, who is my assistant instructor in this class, and he's also a national champion and state champion. So we're going to start off with a very light warm-up, and Sybil will be doing the warm-up. So watch her and do the warm-up along with her. So we'll start with the jumps. Okay, just loosening up the body. It's important to let your hands loose so that the blood starts flowing into the muscles and your muscles get loosened up. Forward and backwards just to get your legs moving. Twisting so that the hip gets a little bit of workout. Cross steps. Then we come to the neck and the head exercises. Side, front and back. Nice big stretch on that. And circles. So as I said previously, in whenever we are doing our warm-ups, we always go downwards. So we start with the head, then we do the shoulders. So we have the shoulder rotations. And arm rotations, big circles. Forward and backwards. Then we move down to the hips. Stretches to the sides. Then front and back. Circles. Reverse. So we've done head, shoulders, hips. Now we move on to the knees. Circles with the knees. And then we move on to the ankles. Rotating the foot to start working out the ankle. The other leg. Okay, and in karate it's always good to give a nice stretch to the muscle. So we go in Zenkutsudachi in the front stance. Okay, push the hip down nice and stretch both the muscles on both sides. Okay, then lifting the heel up and stretching the front leg muscle. Sit at the back and back stance. So you're stretching the muscle at the back again over here. Okay, change in direction. Same thing on the other side. The heel up. And the back stance. Okay, in Kibadachi, the horse stance. Now pushing the knees out. Make sure that you push your knees out so you can get a nice big stretch of the inner muscles. So as you can see, nice, very stable stance, stable muscles. The legs are your foundation. Those are the ones that you stand on, that takes all the weight. So you do a stretch from there. Now you do front stretch. A side stretch. And then we do the butterfly stretch where the knees are pushed out and you push your knees downwards. Okay, so every session has to have a very good warm-up, because if you don't do your warm-up, you are putting yourself at risk of injuring your muscles or pulling a muscle or tearing a muscle or a ligament. So it's always important to do your warm-up before each session. Sensei Akash, please join us back again. You can move backwards a little bit. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to introduce the turning movement. Now, it's not always that you're going to go forward and keep moving backwards. Sometimes you turn. So we're going to show you how to do the turning movement. Okay, so Sybil is going to do the turning movement. Go back. Yeah. So, if you can see the lines on the mats, so this mat is about 1 meter, it's not about, it's 1 meter wide, and your normal stance is half of that. Okay, so keep this in mind, especially when I'm showing the turning movement. Okay, so right leg back and right. So moving forward in the stance. So we're going to do 3 steps forward. Yeah, no, stay there. We are going to do 3 steps forward and then the turning. So I'm going to explain that turning. So H, step forward, knee, sun. So now when you're doing the turning, to maintain that distance between the legs, when the back leg turns to go out the other side, it's important that the back leg goes double that distance. So from here, it will go to the end of the mat and not half the mat. If it's half the mat, then it will come directly behind the other leg. So only shift the back leg. H. So the back leg shifts, and then from there, turn the hip. And stepping forward again, H, knee, sun. Back leg shift, H, turn. Okay, so that is the turning movement. Now we are going to show you what it looks in one motion. H, knee, sun. The term for turn is mawate. So when we say mawate, means you know that you have to turn. Mawate. H, knee, sun. Mawate, yame. Okay, so that is the turning movement. Now we're going to, in the next movement, we're going to do the punches and the turning. How to turn and then continue punching in the other direction. So now we're going to start with the blocks. As you have seen what we did in the last session also, but we didn't touch upon, we're going to start with that today, is the lower block. Okay, so like I said, we have the upper punch, middle punch, lower punch. Anything that comes from below, especially maybe a kick or a punch, a lower punch, we use the lower block. Now, as I said, when you're doing the punches, it's important always that both the hands work simultaneously, and it's important that the hand that is coming back is retracted nice and sharp, so you get the power in the movement from the hand that is coming back. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you the lower block. In the lower block, the hand comes up over here, your palm facing the, your fist facing the ear, elbows closed. Make sure not to keep it open like this, so that your elbow is pointing downwards, because the block is going in that direction. So your elbow should point in the direction that your block is going. So from here, the movement is a nice big round movement and goes out. So if you are in the front stance from there you close this, and from here it goes nice and downwards. At the same time, this hand gets pulled back. Now, unlike the punch, where we keep the shoulders and the hips straight, whenever you're doing the block, it is important that the hip is used to rotate, and in all the blocks we rotate the hips and the hip is going into the side position. So it's important when you do this, I'm going to show you it from the other angle, it's important that your elbow gets squeezed in behind your back when you do the block. Okay, so it's important to do that. So we're going to do the lower block in 2 movements. So keep the left hand out, and we're going to do it in 2 counts. In the first count, we bring the hand up, see that this is closed, H. So always remember that this gap there should not be any gap, because the moment there is a gap, you're keeping your defense open. So a punch can go through or a kick can go through. So always remember to keep this closed. And a nice big movement. At the same time, the hand being retreated. Knee. H. Knee. H. Knee. H. Knee. Now the same technique now in one motion. That was to show you the breakup of the movement. So the actual block is from there in one movement. Okay, so it's a nice sharp movement. So that's because you need to understand, when somebody punches you, they're not going to punch you in 2 movements. They're not going to punch like that. The punch is going to come as one movement, or the kick is going to come in one movement. So your block also should come in one movement. Okay, so we're going to do the lower block in one movement now, but very important that you maintain the full angle of movement. It should not be, when you're training, that you do the block from here. The block has to start from here, so you get a whole range of movement and you get good power into the technique. So the lower block in one movement, H, more sharp. Nick. Sun, a nice sharp movement. Okay, very important is the hand that is coming back. The hand that is coming back, very important in the block and in all the other techniques as well. So in karate we call that the ikite hand. Ikite is the reverse hand which is coming back. So the reverse hand is very important for the sharpness and the power in your karate. So like you saw when they started out. Okay, always when you start out with the block. You start with the block. So this is the lower block that is used when you're starting or even when you turn, right? So when you start and when you turn, you use the lower block. The lower block is used to block any kick that comes from down, okay? Any technique that comes from underneath, you use the lower block. So now we're going to do the stepping forward in the lower block. Okay, so we're going to take a very short break now, and we're going to come back. When we come back, we're going to be doing stepping forward in the lower block, and we are going to combine that with the punches. So join us after this very short break. Yeah, welcome back after the short break. And right now, just before the break, we showed you the basic of the lower block. Okay, so again, it's very important to understand when you're doing punches and when you're doing blocks. When you're doing blocks, the hip is at a 45-degree angle, the shoulders are also at a 45-degree angle. When you're doing punches and kicks, any attacking movement, the hip is always straight. The hips and shoulders straight when you're doing attacking. So right now when we do the block and the punch, we'll show you the difference, how to use the hip into the technique. Okay? So, right leg back, Zenkutsu Gedan Barai. So, I'm going to show you the lower block and the counter attack with the punch. What we're going to do is, Akash is going to be facing this side. So, you can see two angles to this technique. Okay? So, right leg back, Zenkutsu Gedan Barai. Hey! Yeah, so as you can see in the block, the hip is always at a side position and your back elbow is squeezed behind your back. Just one thing that I forgot to mention in that, whenever you're doing a punch, only this portion of your hand should be touching the side. Same thing with all the other techniques. Only this should be touching. The hand shouldn't be kept like this. Always like this with the palm facing upwards. Okay, so right hand out. So that's the reverse punch. So in the same place, we are going to do the movement in the same place. So as you can see, now the reverse punch. Squeeze here. So the lower block, twisting the hip and doing the lower block. H. So as you can see, now the hip has been twisted and now the counter attack. Knee, punch. The hip has come forward. Okay? H. Knee, H, knee, H, here. Change your leg. Same technique. H, knee, H, knee, here. Yummy. So we've done this from two angles just so that you can see the change in the hip movement and the shoulder movement. It's very important because that is where the power is generated from. Okay, so right now we're going to do the same movement but moving forward and moving backwards. Now it's important that right now we're going to do only the lower block moving forward, then the turning. So please watch. The lower block is called the Gedan Uki or the Gedan Barai. Some people call it the Gedan Barai, some people call it the Gedan Uki. It's the same thing, it's the lower block. Okay? Yoi? I right leg back saying Gutsu Gedan Barai. Hey! I moving forward in the lower block. H. Ning. Sun. Chik. Go. Kia. Now the turning and using the lower block in the turning. Okay? H. Ning, Sun, Chik, Kia. Okay? Same thing, 5 movements. Okay? Without counting, 5 movements. So fifth one will be with a Kiai. Now the Kiai is a concept in karate or in martial arts. You must have heard this or you must have seen it somewhere that we do a loud cry, we do a loud Kiai. We call it the Kiai. Some people call it the Ki, some people call it the Chi, whatever. But that is what helps you generate more power into the technique. So we're going to start from there with the lower block and the punch. Lower block, 5 steps, 5th one with the Kiai. Hajme? Now take. Hajme? Okay, so now we're going to, now that you've seen that is the lower block, we are going to incorporate the lower block and the counter attack in each count. So, 1 count Gedan Barai and Gyakusuki 2nd count. Only Gedan Barai. H. So, as you can see, the hip is turned. So, it's very important when you're doing the blocks that your hip is at 45 degrees. I've explained this before. And now the counter attack. Now, important when you're moving forward, when you do a block and a counter attack, when you're moving forward, the next block, normally if you're doing only the block, the hand that is here comes up and blocks. If you're doing only the block. So when you're stepping forward from there, the hand that is at the side comes up and blocks. But when you're doing a block and a counter attack, the hand that is in counter attack, that is the hand that comes up and does the block. Okay? So now the block will be done by the hand which is already outside. H, knee, knee, H, here. Okay. H, knee, H, knee, H, here. Okay. Once again. Now in one count, the same thing, the block and the punch. Again, I'm keeping on repeating this because it is very important. The rotation of the hip is a very important movement in karate because that is where you generate the power from. I get and barai gyakusuki. H. Ring. San. Chick. Kiai. Take H, Ring, Sun, Chick, here. Take. Okay, so that's the lower block in action. So in this session, I wanted to concentrate only on the lower block. So I've shown you the different facets of lower block. Yeah, especially the lower block and the counter attack, how to use the lower block. And remember, in the lower block, we use only this portion of the hand to block. This portion, just above the wrist till there. We use this portion to block. Okay? So with that, we're coming to an end of this episode. And thank you for being with us. We're going to come back with more episodes. Keep learning karate. Follow Joseph Rodrigues, follow Sensei 65, and you are on your way to becoming a champion. Thank you for attending this session. Musvidach. Shomini, right?
Sensei, right?
Otagini, right? Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.